Welcome to the Tustin Area Historical Society interview with the Honorable Tony Coco right here in our museum at El Camino Real and Main Street. We have decided that Tony's life has been so exciting and had such an impact on Tustin that we've broken it into 3 segments, and you're now viewing the 3rd segment, which is Tony's life after politics, where he has been an important volunteer in the city of Tustin and has a very major impact. So I hope you get to watch the other 2 segments, or you probably already have. So let's start talking with Tony about his volunteerism. Now, Tony, we know that you won the Tustin Man of the Year in 1976. Tell us a little bit about what led to that.
Well, the Tustin Men and Women of the Year are selected each year by the former winners. It's not a popular vote out in the community. It's by the recipients. It's called the Tustin Area Man and Woman of the Year Committee, TAMWIC. And
But they don't pick the names, they're submitted by charities?
The names are submitted by charities and by the life members. So if you're a life member, you have the ability to nominate somebody.
Gotcha.
Or if you're a recognized organization in the city, you can put it in a nomination. It's not easy to get nominated or elected on the first try. There are some people that have been nominated 3, 4 years, 5 years, some things. And after I left city council, they had elections, and you're not told when you're nominated. You are now, but at that time you weren't told. And I found out in 1976, after I got to join the inner circle, that I had been nominated a couple of times before that, but they needed a change in the people. I mentioned Bill Moses a little while ago. Bill Moses, I think, voted against me each time it came up, until he was convinced that I got my mind right. And so he switched his vote. So in 1976, Vivian Owen, who was also on the Historical Society Board of Directors, was the Woman of the Year in 1976. So the 2 of us were in charge at that time. Things have changed over the years. We didn't have any governing documents. We didn't have any guidelines. So I took it on myself to write bylaws and guidelines and protocol and script for the meetings and so on. So now we have, volume of documentation. But when I got in, nothing, absolutely nothing. So.
That doesn't surprise me that you did that, Tony. Now, the charitable stuff that you got involved in, was some of that started while you were on the council, or did you, after politics, just jump into a bunch of charities? Was there some that you were always involved in?
Well, I was asked to join the Lions Club by Jerry Mack.
When you were still on the council?
One of my people on the council. I'm thinking of the real estate office, and at that time Tarbell didn't have a real estate office in the city of Tustin, and the real estate officers who were in here, Don Bird and so on, some of the old timers, Eddie Nahegan, asked me to join your groups, but I didn't want to show any favoritism, so I went to the organization that was outside the city. They had the city in Orange, and that was Tarbell. Right after I joined them, they moved their corporate headquarters to Tustin, and that's our skyscraper on Irvine Boulevard and Fashion Way. It's 3 stories. That's the Tustin skyscraper. The Historical Society, I got involved pretty early on that. I'm one of I guess listed as one of the founding people. Been president for several different years.
While you were still on the council?
No,
Oh.
no. This was after. I'm a little fuzzy on the dates, but I know it goes back quite a ways. And Sons of Italy and I try to keep in touch with what's going on in the city and to be a part of it.
You've done a great deal for the Historical Society, and you mentioned being the president several times. That's great. It sounds to me like, knowing you, you probably did the same thing to the society that you did to the Man and Woman of the Year.
Well,
Set up the structure and wrote the...
that's kind of what I do. Like Gretchen, for instance, is a real proofreader. Our late lamented Gene Brown was another one. We were kind of a threesome there. I have a friend who has a T-shirt that says, "While we're talking, I am silently correcting your grammar." It's one way to put people off a little bit.
And what about your education and degree accomplishments after the council years? You mentioned a law school. That was after the council, right?
Right. I had to, it was later in life,
Through which college?
Western State.
Western State.
Right across the street from Cal State Fullerton, where I got the MBA. And I was in class with really, really young kids of 30 and 40 years old. You know, I had 20 years on them at the time.
Whippersnappers.
Whippersnappers, exactly. Right. Al's age. My brother, whom I mentioned a little while ago, his main business was to keep me humble. And I got the JD degree about the same time as my son got his doctorate in microbiology. We were within a month of each other. It was kind of a race to see who was going. But when my brother found out I had it, he said, "Big deal, 3 degrees above zero." So that kept me
Now,
humble.
when you got the law degree, was that the intention to go into a law practice? And then you
Yes,
actually
yes,
did
it
that?
was. Yeah, it was. The practice I selected was patents and trademarks. And the main reason for that is because there's very little competition. Because in order to sit for the patent bar, you have to be an engineer. And most engineers, as I mentioned, don't want to have a thing to do with writing or communicating. And most lawyers don't want anything to do with math or science. Okay, so they're just totally separate entities and disciplines. So to have both of them at the same time is kind of rare. And I was always interested in both aspects of patent law, the technical part and the writing part, and it takes pretty good expertise in both to do that. So that's the field that I chose.
Interesting. Well, you can't pick up the newspaper today without the phrase intellectual property.
That's it. Right.
And
That's my email, by the way. It's IPA, retired intellectual property attorney, retired. That's what it stands for.
Well, it's become a big deal. And
Nobody knows that, but I guess some people will know it now.
yeah. Thanks for the explanation.
Yeah. I hope it doesn't go viral.
It's just in the paper every day, having to do with our trade wars.
Yeah.
So,
China.
Everybody's hearing about it today. And how long did you keep that law practice going?
Well, I retired from pretty much everything in 2007.
Oh, so.
I'm very happily retired now.
Being a lifetime member of Mensa, I'd like to hear how that came about, but also what do you do today to keep a mind like that active?
Well, how it came about was about the same way that I chose electrical engineering. I had heard that it was a little difficult to get through. From your first year, there's 50% attrition into the second year, and then even more. So there's not too many people go through the 4 years. So I said, "Oh, if that's a challenge, I'll try it." And it's the same with Mensa. I had heard about Mensa. It's the top 2%. 1 out of 50 people qualify for it. So I said, why not? So that's how I got into it. But
Is there a difference between Mensa and international Mensa? In other words, is there a U.S.?
well, there's an
Apartment or something?
American Mensa,
Ah.
but it's all part of international
Ah, okay.
Mensa. The bulletin is put out by American Mensa, and then the international organization is comprised of all the countries that have local organizations in it.
Do you remember the year that you were selected?
Oh my gosh. Long time ago. Long enough so that the life membership was cheap enough to get into. I'm glad I did.
Were you still in your 20s?
Yeah. I was in my 20s.
Before politics?
Yeah, so much kind of Mensa. But you were asking what I do to
Yeah, that's the follow-up question.
keep it sharp.
If your mind is that sharp, you have to keep it sharp. What do you do?
Well, I do the New York Times Sunday crossword puzzle.
That's the tough one.
Well, it's not so much that the
Starts
other
off
ones.
easy on Monday, and then it gets harder
Right.
and harder.
Yeah.
So
It's
Sunday's
not so much that the
toughest.
other days don't challenge me, but the Sunday crossword puzzle is so varied. It has history, geography, it has culture, modern culture, language. There's so many different things that come about in order to complete that New York Times Sunday crossword puzzle that keeps me occupied. Tai Chi.
Some viewers may not know what that is. Give us a little Tai Chi.
Tai Chi is a discipline from China. You go to Beijing. I was in Beijing the year of the Olympics, and I look out my window at 6 in the morning, and the park next full of people who were working out before work, and they have the ballet-like movements that appeal to me. There's another branch of Tai Chi that has 19 movements, but they're repetitive. You just do it 10 times, and that doesn't interest me at all. I like the one that flows into each other. But it's really good for balance and for tranquility and for keeping the mind sharp. I'm trying to learn different languages. I'm not good at any of them. Well, maybe I'm good at
That's
English.
very challenging
But,
to learn another language.
Yeah, and that's pretty much why I do it. Instruments. I'm kind of a Scotophile. I like everything about Scotland. I have no connection with Scotland at all. No ancestry there, but I like the music and the pageantry. I like the burr. I could listen to the burr all day long. And so I actually learned the bagpipe when I knew I was going to go to Scotland at the University of Arizona. So just learning instruments, that kind of thing. Just
I've heard that music and math are very closely aligned.
oh, definitely. I go to a love of music class at the senior center as well.
That's good.
Mathematics.
I know you've been a world traveler. How much of that was Navy and how much for fun or business? Maybe half and half? Or?
Well, those 3 years gave me a lot of countries.
But mostly Europe and not Asia.
Istanbul, if you count that as Asia, it's we were there. That was one of the major cities. I tried to get as many countries as I could on my duffel bag, put it on. And I remember being in Denmark at Tivoli Gardens, Copenhagen, and Malmo, Sweden was just a ferry boat ride away. So I said, great, my ship is here in Denmark, but I can make Sweden another country. But I got so wrapped up in Tivoli Gardens for those 3 days, I never made that ferry boat ride. This was in the 50s, and the social mores were way ahead of the United States in Denmark. So that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, I won't crush you.
No, okay.
Well, Tony, we've tried very hard to cover through questions your most remarkable life, is there anything that comes to mind that we've just completely left out?
Come to think of it, there is something.
Good. That's why I asked that question.
In 2010, I decided that this city of Tustin should really have some bocce courts. Now, bocce, as you probably know,
But tell our viewers.
because you're smart,
Tell the viewers.
Steve, and Al Corfield just joined us, is a game played by Italians. It goes back to the Roman era. And it's similar to bowling, lawn bowling. The difference is that the lawn balls are a little eccentric, they have a curve to them, and the bocce balls are spherical. But it takes a court and the balls. And it's a simple game. You just have a little palino that you throw out, which is a small ball, and you try with the big balls to get as close to the palino as possible. That's the basic game. But there's a lot of strategy involved. You can learn the game in 30 minutes, but it takes a lifetime to be good at it. And my father used to have a court in the backyard. So I went to Planning Commission. No, Community Development Commission, that's what it was. Actually, it was Dave Wilson, who's head of the Parks and Recreation right now. And I started the conversation about bocce, and the usual response I get is, what's bocce? So I had to go through what I just went through in the last 30 minutes, or 30 seconds. So Dave was cooperative, and he's been cooperative all the way through, and I really, really admire him for that, and I thank him for that. But he had to go to the Community Development Commission, and then they had to go through the City Council. And we finally got on the list. And they said, when we find some money, then we'll get it done. But to lead up to that point, I had to provide them with pictures and with details and with bids, not bids from company, but estimates from how much it was going to cost and where it should go and so on. So I went through all these committees, and they looked at them, and they said, okay, we're for that, but we don't have the money for it. So that was in 2010. In 2014, we dedicated the 2 bocce courts next to the senior center. So if you're interested in the game, it's the corner of 1st and C Streets at Pepper Tree Park. There's 2 bocce courts in there. And the city has the equipment available anytime the senior center is open, Monday through Friday. So you can just go in there, give your driver's license, they'll give you the equipment, and you just make the exchange when you're through with the game. You don't have to reserve the courts. You can go out there and play at any time, unless somebody else is playing on it, and then you just join them. Okay. But that's one thing that I'm kind of proud of. As I say, maybe someday they'll name that after me.
Down in the Legacy, there's plans for all kinds of sports. Have you thought about trying to move it down there?
Yeah, the Legacy has individual community bocce courts down there. Every time a new park comes up, I kind of push for a bocce court. Sometimes I win, sometimes I don't. But yeah, there will be some in the Legacy. The courts vary widely in quality. The ones we have here are pretty good. They're like AstroTurf, and they're well maintained. There's one in the Legacy that I tried. It's like an asphalt street with potholes in it. So I don't want to.
So it's already been built.
Well, that one is, yeah. But it's in a private, not private community. It's one of the communities of the Legacy. But it depends on who the builder is and what advice they're getting and what material to use and such. But anyway, that's one of my things, is trying to get Bochi introduced to the city.
That's good. Well, Tony, this has been a delightful experience to hear all about your life, which is an amazing and remarkable life. And you've had such an impact on the city of Tustin, to which we're all very, very thankful.
Well, I really appreciate what you've done.
We at the Historical
system
Society are maybe a little more interested than the average Tustin resident, but we'd like to encourage as many people as possible to hear about the interviews as we have with other people, and we hope that they'll come in here in the museum and fire up our computer and watch these, but they can watch them from home through YouTube. So.
Right. And
We've enjoyed thoroughly this experience and learned a lot more about you than we knew, and it's been great. So thank you very much, and I hope all the viewers know there's 3 segments, and make sure you watch all 3 of them or you'll miss something for sure. So thank you.
thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Steve. And remember, work where you must, but live and shop in Tustin.
Great stuff.